Last night, Monday, May 18th, the United States was 24 hours from launching a full-scale military assault on Iran. Not a limited strike, not a targeted hit on a specific facility, a full, large-scale assault. Those are Donald Trump's exact words. He had given the order. The military had planned it. Tuesday, May 19th was the date. The bombers were ready. The targets were selected. And then, at the last possible moment, 3 phone calls changed everything. The Emir of Qatar called. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia called. The President of the United Arab Emirates called. 3 of America's closest Gulf allies. 3 of the leaders whose countries have been absorbing drone and missile strikes since this war began on February 28th called Donald Trump and said the same thing. Wait, 2 to 3 more days. We are close to a deal. And Trump stood down. For the second time in 3 months, the United States military was prepared to escalate this war into something new. And for the second time in 3 months, a last-minute intervention pulled the trigger finger back. This is Global Faultlines. I have been going through every verified piece of reporting from NPR, CBS News, Time Magazine, The Washington Times, and OPB since last night. What I am going to show you in the next 23 minutes is not just what happened, it is what it reveals about the state of this war, the state of this negotiation, and the extraordinary power that 3 Gulf leaders just exercised over the military decisions of the United States of America. Because that last point, 3 Gulf monarchs persuading the American president to call off a planned military assault within 24 hours of launch, is the most important thing that happened in geopolitics yesterday, and most of the coverage has not yet understood its full weight. Let us begin with the exact sequence of events, because precision matters. On Sunday, May 18th, Trump posted on Truth Social, "The clock is ticking for Iran." He warned that if Iran's leaders didn't get moving fast, there would be nothing left of them. Those words, posted publicly on Sunday, were not bluster. Trump knew something the public did not. He had already given the military its order. Tuesday was the day. On Monday, May 18th, less than 24 hours before the planned strikes were set to begin, Trump received calls from the leaders of 3 Gulf states. According to Trump's own Truth Social post, published Monday evening and confirmed by CBS News, NPR, and The Washington Times verbatim, Trump wrote, "I have been asked by the Emir of Qatar, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud, and the President of the United Arab Emirates, Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, to hold off on our planned military attack of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which was scheduled for tomorrow, in that serious negotiations are now taking place, and that, in their opinion, as great leaders and allies, a deal will be made which will be very acceptable to the United States of America, as well as all countries in the Middle East and beyond. This deal will include, importantly, no nuclear weapons for Iran." Read that post carefully, because almost every word in it is significant. First, Trump publicly confirmed for the first time that he had planned a military attack on Iran scheduled for Tuesday. He had not previously disclosed this. The American public learned that a major assault on Iran was hours away at the same moment they learned it had been called off. Second, the reason given for standing down is not new intelligence about Iran's capabilities. It is not a change in military assessment. It is not a congressional intervention. It is 3 Gulf monarchs asking him to wait. Third, the framing matters. Trump called these leaders great leaders and allies. He attributed the decision to hold off not to his own judgment but to their request. That framing, giving the Gulf leaders credit for stopping a war, is deliberate. It gives them political ownership of what comes next. If a deal is reached, they delivered it. If negotiations fail and the strikes resume, they are the ones who asked for the chance that did not succeed. Trump then told reporters at the White House, in words confirmed by NPR, "If we can do that without bombing the hell out of them, I'd be very happy." He said he put the attack off for a little while, hopefully, maybe forever. He added that Gulf allies told him they felt they were 2 to 3 days away from a deal. 2 to 3 days. The entire architecture of war and peace in the Middle East is currently suspended on a 2 to 3 day window. Now let us examine what Iran sent, because the revised Iranian proposal is the thing that made Monday's stand-down possible. Iran submitted a revised 14-point proposal to Pakistani mediators on Monday, the same day Trump called off the strike. This was confirmed by Iranian state-linked media, by Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai, and by a Pakistani source who spoke to Reuters. What is in Iran's revised proposal? The specific terms have not been publicly disclosed in full, but based on reporting from Time, Washington Times, and a senior Iranian official who spoke to Reuters, the following has been verified. Iran included what were described as some nuclear concessions in its latest proposal, an acknowledgement that the nuclear question, which Trump called the core reason for the war, could not be entirely excluded from any deal. A senior Iranian official told Reuters that the United States was softening its own position, agreeing to release a quarter of Iran's frozen foreign assets and showing greater flexibility in allowing Iran to continue some peaceful nuclear activity. Iran's frozen assets, the funds seized under years of sanctions, represent a significant financial lifeline. Even a partial release would provide the Iranian government with resources it urgently needs. The U.S., according to Tasnim, the IRGC-affiliated Iranian news agency, sent a revised set of demands to Tehran alongside the revised Iranian proposal. The American revised proposal is said to include partial unfreezing of Iranian assets and the waiving of sanctions on Iranian oil. Iranian FM spokesperson Baghai confirmed both sides had exchanged proposals. He said, "Over the past 2 years, they have repeatedly raised more or less the same issues regarding enrichment and Iran's enriched materials. We have always said that these claims have no basis in reality." Iran's position on nuclear enrichment, the right to enrich uranium as a sovereign nation, has not changed. The U.S. position that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon has not changed. What may have changed is the flexibility around the gap between those two positions. And a Pakistani mediator, speaking to Reuters with notable urgency, said, "We don't have much time. Both sides keep changing their goalposts." That quote, from someone inside the negotiating channel, captures the state of these talks precisely. Progress is real enough to keep a military strike on hold, but durable enough to produce an agreement? That is the question that the next 2 to 3 days will answer. Now let us examine the market reaction, because it tells you exactly how the world is pricing the probability of a real deal. Minutes before Trump's announcement on Monday evening, oil futures were trading at $108.83 per barrel. The moment Trump's Truth Social post was published, confirming that the strike was off and negotiations were underway, petroleum futures fell by more than $2 almost instantly. $2 per barrel, in minutes, based on one social media post. That is how tightly the oil market is tracking every word out of Washington and Tehran. Every signal about whether this war escalates or de-escalates moves the price of the energy that powers the global economy. But here's what the market is also telling you. The oil price did not fall back to pre-war levels. It did not signal confidence that a deal is close or that the Strait of Hormuz is about to reopen. It edged back up and ended Monday at $107.25 per barrel. $107, still more than $1 above where it started the day. The market said, "We heard that a strike was called off, but we are not yet pricing in a real peace deal. We are pricing in maybe 2 to 3 more days of uncertainty, possibly followed by a deal, possibly followed by a strike." That $1 residual premium is the market's assessment of the probability that Tuesday's reprieve becomes Wednesday's war. Let us talk about Iran's reaction, because it tells you something critically important about how Tehran is reading this moment. Within minutes of Trump's Truth Social post being published, Iranian state television ran a ticker on its broadcast and posted on its X account describing Trump's decision to cancel the strike as a retreat based on fear. Not a diplomatic achievement. Not a sign of progress toward peace, a retreat based on fear. That framing, chosen deliberately by Iranian state media within minutes of Trump's announcement, reveals something important about how the Iranian government is communicating this moment to its own population. If Iran's leadership wanted to signal genuine willingness to negotiate, genuine openness to the kind of concessions that a deal would require, the messaging to domestic audiences would be different. It would be framed as a diplomatic breakthrough, as evidence that the resistance strategy is working, as a step toward a sustainable peace. Calling it a retreat based on fear frames the stand down as weakness on America's part, not progress toward a deal. It tells the Iranian public that their government is winning, that America blinked. That framing serves domestic political purposes inside Iran, but it makes the diplomatic task harder. A negotiating partner who publicly describes your concessions as signs of weakness is a negotiating partner whose internal political dynamics may make genuine concessions on their own side very difficult to achieve. There is also a harder piece of evidence about Iran's actual military posture during the stand-down period. Iranian state television reported that defense systems were activated late Monday on Keshem Island, the largest Iranian island in the Persian Gulf, home to approximately 150,000 people and a water desalination plant located at the mouth of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran activated its defenses on the night Trump called off the strike. Whatever is being said at the negotiating table through Pakistani mediators, Iran's military is not standing down. Now let us examine the political dimension inside the United States, because the fractures in American politics over this war are as consequential as the fractures in the diplomatic track. Republican Senator Naftali Bennett, one of the most hawkish voices in the pro-Israel caucus, posted on X within hours of Trump's announcement, "We must finish what we started. I fear continuing negotiations without a forceful response prolongs the conflict, gives our allies doubt, and will further embolden the Iranian terrorist regime." That is a Republican senator, publicly on the record, saying that Trump's decision to call off the strike was wrong, that Trump should be bombing Iran right now instead of negotiating. This is the political pressure from Trump's right that constrains every move toward a diplomatic resolution. Every concession the United States makes in the negotiating channel generates a response from the hawks, inside Congress, inside Trump's own coalition, that frames that concession as weakness and appeasement. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives deadlocked 212 to 212 on the War Powers Resolution that would have required Trump to end hostilities without congressional authorization. The war is constitutionally contested. The political coalition behind continuing it is fracturing, and the voices demanding escalation are getting louder even as the voices in the Gulf are asking for restraint. Trump is navigating between three simultaneous pressures. From the right, bomb Iran, do not negotiate from weakness, finish the job. From the Gulf, wait, we are close, give us 2 to 3 days, a deal will be made. From the markets, oil at $107, global energy crisis ongoing, the economic damage of continued closure is measured in trillions of dollars. Every decision he makes satisfies one of those pressures and generates pushback from the other two. The stand down on Monday satisfied the Gulf. It generated immediate criticism from the hawks, and it moved the oil price by $2, not by 20, because the market is not yet convinced that 2 to 3 days becomes a deal. Let us now examine the state of the broader conflict, because what is happening in Yemen and Lebanon and on Keshem Island simultaneously with the main negotiation track tells you something important about the structural complexity of ending this war. In Lebanon, Israeli strikes killed 5 people, including 2 children, on Sunday. The Lebanese Health Ministry now reports 3,020 people killed in Israeli strikes since early March, with 9,273 wounded. Hezbollah called U.S.-brokered ceasefire talks between Lebanon and Israel a dead end. Lebanon is not a separate conflict. It is directly linked to the Iran deal framework. Iran has consistently demanded that any deal include a cessation of Israeli military activity in Lebanon. The United States has consistently refused to include Hezbollah and Lebanon in the Iran deal framework. That gap between Iran's demands and America's refusal means that even if a nuclear deal framework is reached, the Lebanon dimension could still blow it up. And Iran has now floated something new that has received almost no coverage, but that should be alarming to every government with communication infrastructure in the region. Time magazine reported that Iran suggested it might next seek to impose control over the subsea internet cables running through its waters. These cables provide internet connectivity and transmit data to countries across the Middle East, Asia, and Africa. Several major undersea cable routes transit Iranian-controlled waters. If Iran moves against subsea cables, after striking a nuclear plant, after attacking U.S. warships, after seizing commercial vessels, after effectively closing the Strait of Hormuz, it would represent a new category of infrastructure targeting, one that affects not just energy and shipping, but the digital connectivity of entire regions. This is what escalation looks like when it unfolds incrementally, each step more audacious than the last, each one pushing against a boundary that was previously assumed to be off limits. Nuclear plants, subsea cables. What comes after that? Let us also examine the Strait of Hormuz itself, because the numbers on ship transits tell you exactly how far this crisis is from resolution. According to maritime tracking firm Kepler, 55 commodity vessels crossed the Strait of Hormuz between May 11th and May 17th. The previous week, just 19 vessels crossed, the lowest weekly figure since the U.S.-Israeli strikes began on February 28th. In peacetime, the strait handles roughly 1/5 of global oil and LNG shipments, plus fertilizer and other major commodities. The pre-war weekly average was hundreds of vessels. The current weekly average, since March 1st, across the entire wartime period, is 55 per week. Even on the best weeks of this war, the strait is operating at a tiny fraction of its peacetime capacity. Iranian state television said the Revolutionary Guards were allowing more ships to transit, but the Kepler data shows that even with those allowances, last week's 55 crossings remain broadly in line with wartime averages. The strait is still effectively closed. For all practical purposes, 20% of the world's oil supply remains disrupted, and whatever negotiations are taking place through Pakistani mediators, the physical reality on the water has not changed. That physical reality will not change until there is an agreement that both sides actually implement, not a ceasefire that both sides claim to honor while firing on each other, not a revised proposal that both sides exchange through intermediaries while neither side moves its military posture, an actual agreement, with actual implementation, on the actual water. Here is the strategic picture that Global Faultlines is here to provide. Monday, May 18, 2026 was the most revealing day of this entire war. In a single day, we learned that the United States had planned a full-scale assault on Iran scheduled for the following morning. We learned that 3 Gulf monarchs asked Trump to call it off. We learned that Trump complied. We learned that Iran submitted a revised proposal and that the U.S. responded with its own revisions. We learned that oil fell $2 and then crept back up. We learned that Iranian state TV called the stand down a retreat based on fear. We learned that Iran's defenses were activated on Qeshm Island the same night. We learned that a Republican senator said Trump should be bombing Iran instead of negotiating. And we learned that the entire situation, war and peace, rests on a 2 to 3 day window that a Pakistani mediator described, with 3 words: we don't have much time. That is the state of the Iran war on May 19, 2026, 90 days into the conflict, both sides exchanging revised proposals, both sides maintaining military readiness, oil at $107, the Strait of Hormuz at a fraction of its peacetime capacity, a nuclear plant struck and smoking in Abu Dhabi, Putin signing 40 documents in Beijing, and the American president calling off a strike because 3 Gulf monarchs told him to wait. Former Secretary of Defense Robert Gates, speaking on CBS News, put the situation in its starkest terms. He said people inside Iran are cowed, they're afraid, and right now they're concerned with how they can eat and live under the current circumstances. He said protests are possible, but regime change from the streets is unlikely. What you generally see in regimes like this is not so much a change of regime from the streets, but that the regime itself begins to fracture. A regime beginning to fracture. A negotiation on a 2 to 3 day window. A strike held off by Gulf monarchs. A revised proposal through Pakistani mediators. A stand-down called a retreat by Iranian state television. And a military instructed to be prepared to go forward with a full, large-scale assault of Iran on a moment's notice. This war is simultaneously the closest it has been to a diplomatic resolution and the closest it has been to full-scale military escalation. Both things are true at the same time, and which one materializes, deal or assault, may be decided in the next 48 hours. This is Global Faultlines. We track the forces shaping the world, not just the events on the surface, but the structural realities beneath them. What Monday revealed is that the most powerful military on Earth is being held in a pattern of escalation and de-escalation by a combination of Gulf monarchs, Pakistani mediators, Iranian revised proposals, and oil futures markets, each one pulling in a slightly different direction, each one creating a constraint that the others partially override. Trump said he put the attack off for a little while, hopefully, maybe forever. 3 words. Hopefully, maybe forever, that tell you exactly how much certainty exists about what comes next. If a deal is reached in the next 2 to 3 days, this moment will be remembered as the pivot point, the day the Gulf leaders stop the bombs and open the door. If a deal is not reached, the military has been instructed to be prepared to go forward on a moment's notice. The door is open. For now. The moment's notice is ready. For now. Which one wins in the next 48 hours will tell us more about the architecture of this new world order than almost anything that has happened in the past 3 months. Subscribe to Global Faultlines. Come back tomorrow. Because this story is not over, and when it moves, it will move fast. This is Global Faultlines. See beyond the headlines.